The fog came first. Thick, suffocating, curling over the deck like a living thing. I heard it before I saw it, a faint scratching, scraping against the hull, almost deliberate. The waves were unusually still, the sea holding its breath. I leaned over the railing, peering into the gray soup, but there was nothing. Then a whisper. Soft, unintelligible at first, but unmistakably human. "Don't come closer." It wasn't over the radio. It wasn't my imagination. It was real, yet impossibly distant, carried across the water like a shadow. I tried to shake it off, telling myself the wind played tricks. But the fog thickened. Shapes moved within it, brief and angular, vanishing before I could focus. The compass spun without reason. My crew muttered, voices low and trembling. I told them it was nothing, just fog, but even I felt the panic gnawing in my chest. Then I saw the island, or at least something that looked like it. Black cliffs rose from the water, jagged and unnatural, the trees atop swaying though there was no wind. And on the shore, a figure, pale, unmoving, staring, a finger raised, pointing straight at me. The radio crackled violently, a single ragged word cutting through static. "Leave." I wanted to laugh, to curse it off as a prank, but deep down, I knew whatever awaited me on that island, it would not wait quietly. The fog clung to my skin even as I stepped off the small ferry onto the cracked wooden pier. The air smelled of rot and salt, and every creak of the boards underfoot echoed too loudly, like the island itself was listening. I pulled my jacket tighter, though the cold wasn't what made me shiver. It was the feeling of eyes on me. From somewhere in the dense forest lining the cliffs, something watched, silent and patient. I had come to the forgotten island to document its abandoned settlements, to uncover the whispers that locals treated like myths. Stories of disappearances, strange lights, voices carried across the water at night. Old journals claimed the island held a presence that made men vanish, that left survivors hollow, shivering and babbling about things they shouldn't have seen. I told myself I didn't believe in such things. I was a reporter, a documentarian. I dealt in facts, not folklore. The village ahead was worse than I imagined. Roofs sagged under years of neglect, windows gaped like empty sockets. The smell of mildew was so strong it clawed at my throat. I could see remnants of life, a rocking chair frozen mid-swing, a child's shoe on the porch, a jar of pickles still sealed but cloudy. No birds sang. No animals moved. Even the wind seemed cautious, hesitant to disturb the silence. "Don't touch anything," came a voice behind me. I whirled. A man, or maybe a boy, stood half hidden among the trees. His eyes were wide, glassy, like he hadn't blinked in days. They watch," he whispered. "Who?" I asked, my voice louder than I intended. He shook his head. "No one leaves." "Not really." I tried to laugh, though it sounded hollow. "You expect me to believe." He stepped closer, his thin fingers shaking. "I saw them. At night. Faces in the fog. They whisper your name. And if you answer, they take you." A cold dread curled in my stomach. I had dismissed every tale I'd heard as exaggerated, but the man's eyes. His fear was real. And in that instant I noticed something I hadn't before. The trees lining the cliffs weren't swaying randomly. They moved as if responding to some unseen rhythm. Shadows flickered, even though the sun was high, and a low hum, almost imperceptible, vibrated under the boards of the pier. I set my backpack down, fumbling with the camera. Every journalist instinct screamed to capture this, but another part of me, a quieter, more primal part, urged me to leave. The island didn't want visitors. I didn't understand why yet, but I could feel it in my bones. I moved toward the village center. The buildings were clustered around what must have been a town square. The ground was littered with broken pottery, rusted tools, and scraps of paper that flapped in the wind like pleading hands. A sign, barely legible, read, "Welcome to Grey Haven." The irony wasn't lost on me. Gray wasn't just the color of the fog, it was the color of life itself here. Then I saw her. A woman, or what looked like a woman, standing in the doorway of a house with no roof. Her hair was long matted, hanging in damp strands over her face. She didn't move, but I could feel her stare, even from 20 feet away. I raised my camera instinctively, but the moment I aimed, she vanished. Not behind the wall, not into shadow, simply gone. "Did you see that?" I whispered to the man who had followed me. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on where she had been. "They do that to lure you, to test you, to see if you notice." "Who?" I repeated, the dread in my chest tightening. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and ran into the fog, leaving me alone in the empty square. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I thought of turning back, of leaving the island before the sun fell completely, but something, curiosity, arrogance, stupidity, kept me rooted. I stepped into the first house. Inside, dust coated everything, and the smell of decay was stronger. On a table lay an old yellow journal. I opened it. The handwriting was frantic, angular, as if the writer had been shaking while recording their thoughts. The first entry read, "They watch from the mist. They know what we fear before we do. Do not trust the fog. Do not trust your own mind. Escape is impossible." The words made me laugh nervously. Of course. Typical island superstition. I shoved the journal into my bag, forcing myself to focus on the next building. And then I heard it, a slow, deliberate knock. Wood on wood, coming from above, echoing through the empty streets. I froze. No one else was there. The sound came again, closer. Tap, tap, tap. Each knock a heartbeat, counting down. And then a whisper, barely audible, brushing against my ear. "Stay forever." I spun around. Empty streets. Empty houses. Only the fog remained, curling in and out of broken windows like fingers. I knew in that moment that I had already crossed a line. There was no turning back. The island had claimed my attention, and maybe if I wasn't careful, it would claim me next. The fog never lifted. Even as night fell, it refused to thin, swallowing the moon and stars. I could hear it move across the island, hissing through broken windows, slipping under doors. Every step I took in the abandoned village was mirrored by another sound, a faint echo behind me, as if someone or something followed my every move. I tried to focus on my work, photographing dilapidated homes and rusty remnants of lives that had ended here. But the more I moved, the heavier the silence became, pressing against my eardrums. Occasionally, I thought I heard voices in the distance, fragmented words I couldn't quite place. "Why are you here?" A voice whispered, seeming to come from the shadows themselves. I turned sharply, heart hammering, but the alley was empty. Only the fog moved. That night, I settled in what must have once been the town hall. The building was unstable, beams leaning at impossible angles, but it offered some shelter. I set my camera on a table and tried to organize my notes, but my hands shook uncontrollably. Every scrap of paper, every piece of broken furniture seemed to twitch as I looked away. I began to notice patterns in the fog. At first, it was subtle. Shadows that didn't match objects, shapes in the mist that moved against the wind. Then came the whispers, clearer this time. Words I could almost understand. Names. My name. I started hearing my own voice, echoing from the fog. "You shouldn't be here." Sleep didn't come. When my eyes closed, I saw the faces of those who had vanished before me. Etched into the fog, fleeting glimpses of pale skin and empty eyes, mouths open in silent screams. I woke often, convinced someone was standing just beyond the doorway, listening. Every creak, every groan of the building became a message I was too afraid to decipher. The following day, I explored further into the village. I found signs that others had been here recently, despite the deserted appearance. Footprints pressed into the soft soil, circling the same empty houses. A child's toy, freshly splintered, lay where no child could have reached. And the journal. I found it again, lying open on a windowsill, pages I had not turned now filled with hastily scribbled warnings. They know your thoughts. They wait where you think it's safe. You can't hide in the open. Do not linger. I tried to leave the village entirely, to escape to the cliffs where the ferry had dropped me. But the path I had followed vanished behind me. Trees bent into unnatural shapes, forming corridors that led me back into the village square, as if the island itself were a labyrinth designed to trap. I began to doubt my memory. Had I walked in circles? Was the village shifting, or was I losing my mind? Voices in the fog grew bolder. One night I heard a man speaking, though no one was near. "You shouldn't be here." I answered, my voice trembling. "Who are you?" "I am the one who left." I thought I could escape. But they wait. The words froze me. The island didn't just consume people. It collected them, left fragments behind, shadows of existence that lingered to warn the next visitor. It wasn't just voices. Objects moved subtly when I wasn't looking. Doors that had been closed now hung ajar. Chairs shifted positions. A book fell from a shelf despite no breeze. Each time, a whisper followed, like the island itself mocking my curiosity. You see too much." I searched for answers in the journals I found scattered throughout the village. They told fragmented stories. Families disappearing overnight, entire homes abandoned in panic, travelers vanishing without a trace. One entry detailed a fisherman who had dared to dock here decades ago. He described a fog that whispered, a presence that stared from every shadow, and a warning from an old islander. The island doesn't forget. Those who arrive are watched. Those who linger are taken. The flashbacks were vivid. In the journal's pages, I saw the faces of the lost, their terror imprinted on paper as if the ink itself had absorbed their fear. And then there were the sketches, maps of the island with strange symbols marking areas I had already walked through, areas that seemed alive. Paranoia gnawed at me. I questioned every sound, every shadow. I stopped trusting my senses. Footsteps behind me? A trick of my mind, surely. Or not. The whispers grew insistent, forming broken sentences. Do not trust the fog. Do not trust yourself. I confronted the few inhabitants I found. Figures half hidden in the mist, their faces pale and hollow. One, an old caretaker of sorts, muttered in a rasping voice. They were never gone. They wait. You think you're seeing them, but you are them. Every visitor leaves a part behind. I couldn't make sense of him. Part of me feared speaking aloud might summon something worse, yet silence offered no solace. By the third day, I could no longer discern the real from the illusion. Shadows lengthened and twisted unnaturally. Fog thickened in corridors where sunlight should have reached. I began to hear conversations behind closed doors, neighbors who had vanished years ago, speaking in broken, fragmented sentences. Leave now." He saw, she answered. Each voice carried the weight of desperation. I wondered if these echoes were warnings, or the island's cruel attempt to toy with my sanity. One night, I discovered the cliff path. From its edge, the ocean stretched endlessly, black as ink. But there, in the fog over the waves, I saw faint lights, lanterns drifting aimlessly, carried by unseen hands. I realized with a chill that they marked the remains of previous visitors, glowing like trapped souls, condemned to wander the periphery forever. The final straw came when I woke to my own voice, shouting from somewhere in the village square. "Help me! Don't let them take me!" I bolted to the source, only to find the square empty, the fog swallowing my cries. The air grew colder, thicker, almost tangible. Shapes formed within it, vague but undeniably human. Figures crouched, waited, vanished, and reappeared closer each time I turned. The realization settled like ice in my chest. I was not alone. I had never been alone. By then, I understood the truth. The horror of the forgotten island was not a creature, not a single malevolent being. It was the island itself, a sentient, patient collector of fear, a trap for the curious, a mirror that reflected what we most desperately try to ignore. It thrived on doubt, paranoia, isolation. Every whispered warning, every shadowy movement was a fragment of those who had vanished, now tools in its design. I could no longer tell if I was being watched, or if I had become a part of the watching. My reflection in broken glass was distorted, my eyes too wide, my face drawn with panic I had never known before. The journal warned it all. Those who linger became part of the island's memory, their fear imprinted on its fog. I tried to escape, running through twisting paths, climbing jagged cliffs, but the island resisted. Paths shifted. Cliffs became walls. The fog swallowed landmarks. Every route I took led me back to the village square, the center of the island's attention. And always, the whispers followed, closer each time. You cannot leave. You are theirs. By the fourth day, exhaustion and fear had reshaped my mind. I spoke little, documenting less. I watched, listened, felt, and I realized the island was shaping me, molding my thoughts, feeding on my terror. Every creaking board, every flicker of movement, every whisper was designed to break me, to ensure I understood that escape was impossible. It was inevitable. I understood with a clarity that chilled me to my core that the horror would not just touch me, it would consume me, piece by piece, thought by thought, until nothing remained but fear. The island was patient. It had all the time in the world, and I had nowhere to hide. The fog thickened until it was almost tangible, curling around my ankles, reaching up like hands made of smoke. The village was unrecognizable now. Streets twisted in impossible angles, buildings seemed to breathe, walls flexing as if the structures themselves were alive. I had stopped keeping track of time. Day and night no longer mattered. The fog erased it. Every step forward was mirrored by an echo behind me, soft but deliberate, like my own breathing had been stolen and returned to me warped. Shadows moved without light, flitting along broken walls and fallen beams. I called out, voice cracking. Who's there? Show yourself. A pause. Then, in a rasping chorus, whispers rose from all directions. You shouldn't have come. You cannot leave. I ran, lungs burning, heart hammering in a rhythm that the fog seemed to mock. Doors slammed shut behind me without wind. Windows rattled as if something outside pressed against the panes. Every path I tried led me back to the square, now warped beyond recognition. The town I had studied, photographed, documented, had ceased to exist in any sane form. Then I saw them. Figures emerging from the mist. Pale, faceless, their limbs too long, movements jerky and unnatural. They drifted silently toward me, stopping just short of human reach, staring with hollow eyes that reflected my own terror. I realized with a jolt that these were the lost, the souls of those who had vanished, trapped, broken, now instruments of the island. Leave, or join us, one whispered. I stumbled backward. I won't. You already are. The air grew thick, pressing on my chest. I couldn't move my arms. My voice became a croak. My thoughts raced. The island wasn't just watching me, it was inside me. Every doubt, every fear, every memory of hesitation was amplified until I could barely distinguish reality from illusion. A figure stepped forward, different from the rest. The woman I had glimpsed days ago, the one who vanished at the edge of my vision. Her hair hung like black water, her face obscured in shadow. She raised a finger, pointing straight at me. Her voice slithered into my mind. You belong to us now. I turned, trying to run, but the streets had become corridors, walls bending inward. The fog was alive, swirling, whispering, laughing. Faces pressed against the mist, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. My reflection appeared in shards of broken glass, twisted, eyes wide, a mouth I didn't recognize screaming. I remembered the journals, the warnings, the words of the old caretaker. Every visitor leaves a part behind. Every fear feeds them. You cannot escape what you have become. I realized the truth with a cold, hollow certainty. The island didn't need to physically touch me. It already had. It had harvested my fear, reshaped my mind, and now controlled my perception. The figures weren't attacking. They were extensions of my terror. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath me. I fell into darkness, landing hard on a floor that seemed solid but warped, angle sharp, ceilings twisting impossibly above. The fog followed, filling the space until visibility was nil. The whispers were deafening, overlapping, echoing in my skull. Answer, answer, answer. I felt hands, not physical, brushing along my skin, tugging at my thoughts. Panic clawed at my mind. I shouted, screamed, words meaningless, but the island heard. It reveled. Then the shadows began to speak clearly. One voice, my own, whispered from the mist. "Why are you afraid? This is who you are." Another joined, also mine. "You cannot resist." I stumbled through the corridor, realizing that escape was impossible. Every wall, every floorboard, every shard of broken glass reflected fragments of myself. I was surrounded by myself, my fears, my failures. I was the horror. The woman stepped closer, now solid and yet unreal. Her voice broke through. "Do you see? You are not alone. But you are never free." I screamed, lunging at her, but my hands passed through shadows. She dissolved into fog, and I felt the presence of hundreds more, rising from the mist, pressing in from every angle. My chest constricted. My mind spun. I could barely focus. Every memory of leaving the ferry, of seeing the village, of reading the journals, all of it, was a trap designed to make me believe I had agency. I fell to my knees. My hands clawed at the ground, at walls, at air. The whispers became screams. I could feel the island inside me, pulling, twisting, consuming. I tried to scream, but the sound was mine and yet not mine. My reflection in a puddle of stagnant water rippled, showing not me, but the faceless figures staring. And then I saw it. The square, the center of the village, warped beyond recognition, a vortex of shadows and fog. Everything converged there, every whisper, every movement, every fear. I understood. This was the heart of the island, the source of its power. If I survived, I needed to reach it. I ran. Or I thought I did. The fog resisted, curling around my legs, tugging me backward, dragging me into itself. The whispers urged me forward, then mocked me, then taunted me with fragments of my own thoughts. "You cannot leave. You already belong." At the vortex, I saw the full horror. Figures of the lost. Dozens, hundreds, circling endlessly, their faces twisted, voices overlapping in a deafening chorus of despair. And in the center, a shape formed. Tall, dark, impossible. It was not a man, not a creature, not a thing I could name. It was the island itself, manifesting, an amalgam of fog, shadow, and terror. It spoke, not with words, but directly into my mind. All who come leave apart. All who linger become whole. Fear feeds us. You are ours. I tried to resist. My mind screamed against the pressure, trying to remember who I was, what I was, clinging to the fragments of sanity. But it was futile. Every memory twisted, every thought corrupted. I felt myself fracturing, pieces of identity slipping away, absorbed by the island. Desperation took over. I clawed, screamed, flailed, but the vortex drew me in, and I understood the truth. There was no victory here. There would be no heroism, no last-minute escape. The horror was inevitable, patient, omnipotent. The final thing I felt was not fear, not pain, not even despair. It was recognition. I had become part of it. The whispers softened, the fog receded slightly, and I felt the countless others who had come before, merging with me, guiding me into the center. I was alone, yet not alone. My mind fragmented, yet my consciousness lingered, tethered to the island's will. Then silence. Absolute, suffocating, infinite silence. I was still aware, still watching, still waiting. And the island smiled. The fog never fully lifted. Even weeks after my experience, though weeks was a term that felt strange, meaningless now, I could still feel the weight of the forgotten island pressing against my mind. I had returned technically to the world I once knew, but the world was hollow. Colors were muted, sounds dull, the air heavy with a quiet that felt unnatural. My reflection, though physically intact, no longer resembled me entirely. Eyes too wide, cheeks hollowed, a shadow lingering in the corners of my vision that moved independently. I tried to speak about it. Friends, colleagues, anyone who would listen. Words failed me. Each attempt to describe the island, the fog, the whispers, the impossible architecture, was met with polite disbelief or concerned looks. Even writing it down felt futile. Sentences twisted themselves as I typed, letters rearranging, words forming echoes of the island's whispers. You cannot leave. You are ours. Objects around me seemed altered. My apartment became a reflection of the village. Small items moved without explanation. Shadows bent unnaturally along the walls. Mirrors rippled in ways that didn't correspond to light. At night, I swore I heard distant knocks, faint but deliberate, echoing through empty streets and alleyways far from the island. Sleep became dangerous. Each night, I dreamed of the vortex. Fog curling into impossible forms, the lost faces reaching out. I saw myself, twisted, fractured, moving among them. The whispers were louder in dreams, clearer. You belong. You always belonged. I stopped trying to leave the city. Streets and houses blurred, too similar to the village square. Each alley threatened to fold into another, each park a potential corridor to the fog. I avoided open spaces at night, avoiding reflections wherever possible. Mirrors were dangerous. They could hold glimpses of the island, fragments of the vortex. A simple glance could steal a part of you, like it had stolen me. Occasionally, strangers approached, eyes too wide, faces pale. They never spoke, but I felt their recognition, a shared understanding that we were marked, tethered to the island. Sometimes I thought I saw figures in the fog rolling off the coast, shapes in the distance that seemed to drift with impossible intent. I realized then, the island was not bound by geography. Its influence reached beyond, seeping into the minds of those who had encountered it. I tried distractions. Work, travel, noise, human contact. None helped. The whispers returned no matter the setting, sometimes gentle, sometimes urgent. And always the same message. Do not forget. We wait. You will return. I could no longer tell if I spoke aloud or if my thoughts were vocalized by the island itself. My reflection sometimes whispered back, fragments of sentences I hadn't yet thought. Do you see? You are theirs now. Friends began to drift away. Some moved cities, others avoided me entirely. I was a warning, a shadow, someone who had glimpsed the impossible and returned changed. Loneliness deepened, yet the whispers filled the void, companionable yet terrifying. They reminded me that isolation was permanent, both physical and mental. I revisited the journals I had taken from the island, flipping through the pages carefully, though they no longer contained the warnings I remembered. The words shifted, almost alive. You cannot leave. We are patient. You will come back. You always return. I understood then that the forgotten island had not merely been a location. It was a force, an entity that claimed pieces of its visitors, weaving them into its consciousness. I was fragmented, tethered. My mind housed not only my memories but echoes of the lost, their whispers now part of the constant hum of fear that filled me. One evening, months after my return, I felt an urge I could not resist. My hands trembled as I opened maps of the coastline, tracing paths by ferry and boat. The compulsion was irresistible, a pull from deep inside, a whisper at the base of my skull. Return, come home. I resisted. I stayed indoors, refusing to pack bags or board a vessel. Yet every night, I awoke to the sound of fog rolling across waves I could not see, knocking against my window as though the island itself had crossed the ocean. Each knock, each sigh of wind, each shadow that moved against reason reinforced the inevitability of my destiny. I would go back. I spoke to no one. I left no messages. The world outside became a background, a faint echo. The island's call grew stronger. It was patient, unyielding, inevitable. I began to realize that survival meant adaptation, not escape. I carried the fear with me constantly, a living, breathing reminder of what awaited, a tether I could not sever. The island's reach was subtle. Objects shifted in my home as they had in the village. Reflections altered themselves. Voices murmured from corners, from gaps in the walls, repeating the same haunting sentence. Do not forget. We wait. I began leaving small offerings in my apartment. Books, candles, scraps of paper. Rituals learned from the journals, meaningless yet comforting. The whispers seemed slightly less urgent, slightly more forgiving, though never gone. I understood at last that the horror of the forgotten island was not a moment, a visitor, or even a single being. It was the inevitability of return, the impossibility of forgetting, the patient claim on curiosity and fear. Once touched by it, even a step away became an eternity. You were never fully free. You carried it, a shadow in your mind, a whisper at the edge of perception. I tried to write a record, a warning for anyone who might stumble across its existence. But the words betrayed me. Typed letters shifted. Sentences rearranged themselves into fragments of the island's own whispers. Come back. Always back. You cannot leave. You are ours. I set the keyboard aside. The warning was already futile. There was no escape, no heroic tale of survival, no triumphant return to safety. The horror was patient, immortal, and inevitable. Sometimes at night, I hear the fairy horn, faint and distant. I imagine the fog curling across the water, the black cliffs rising impossibly from the sea. I imagine the vortex waiting, patient, calling my name. And I know I will go back. I am broken, hollow, changed. Yet part of me is eager. The last words I hear, not in sleep, not in thought, but in the very marrow of my being, are the island's final embrace. We wait, always. And in that silence I understand. The forgotten island does not need to strike. Its victory is inevitability. Its triumph is patience. And I, like all who came before, belong to it now. Even when I close my eyes, even when the world feels normal, the island is there. Watching. Waiting. I feel its presence in every shadow, every ripple in the water, every whisper that curls around my thoughts. I am not free. I am not safe. And it is coming for me again.